As usual, we shall begin with the title, The Striders. What is the strider? The strider is an insect, very common in North America. It's a very small insect, a tiny insect with long legs, using which it supports itself on water. The strider walks on water, utilizing the surface tension of water. Ramanujan must have come across the strider shortly after he arrived in the United States. I think the positioning of the Striders, of the poem The Striders, as the inaugural poem of the inaugural collection of A.K. Ramanujan, and later as the inaugural poem of the collected poems of A.K. Ramanujan, was no accident. It was a very deliberate decision. Looking around, Ramanujan must have felt a special affinity with the strider. In real life, Ramanujan was a very shy person, a very modest person, a person who was never sure of himself. Some poets have colossal egos, but not Ramanujan. He had a self-effacing personality. He was extremely sensitive and was easily hurt by negative responses from his environment. In certain periods in his life, Ramanujan suffered from clinical depression and had to seek psychiatric help. I think, looking around, Ramanujan was able to identify himself with a strider, the tiny insect, the insignificant bug. That was precisely what he was in his own eyes. I understand that Ramanujan was quite miserable in India while he was teaching in Koilon, which is now Kollam, Madurai and Belgaum. Even after he migrated to the United States, I think he was not at ease with himself, at peace with himself, and at ease with his environment, at peace with his environment. Throughout his life, Ramanujan remained a stranger to his environment, be it India or the United States, and more importantly, a stranger to himself. This is how his poem, Self-Portrait, opens. I quote, "I resemble everyone but myself." Unquote. Under these circumstances, Ramanujan was able to identify himself with the strider, and that is why he decided to choose the poem under discussion as the first poem of his first book of poems. Take one more look at the title of the poem. The title of the poem is not The Strider, it is The Striders. The poet has used the plural form. Why has he not used the singular form? For one thing, it is very rare to come across a strider which is all alone. Striders move in swarms, and so the plural form is more appropriate. For another, by using the plural form, the poet trivializes the strider further, makes the insignificant insect more insignificant. Perhaps the speaker feels that he is not just a strider, but a member of a mass of striders, of a swarm of striders. The striders of A.K. Ramanujan has a very special place in the matrix of his work. This is because, though The Striders was not the first poem that Ramanujan wrote, The Striders was most certainly not the first poem that Ramanujan wrote, for he started writing poems as a teenager. It was the first poem, it was positioned as the first poem of the first collection of poems published by A.K. Ramanujan. Thus, The Striders was the inaugural poem of the inaugural collection of poems of A.K. Ramanujan, which was also titled The Striders. Why did A.K. Ramanujan choose The Striders, the poem The Striders, as the titular poem of his first book of poems? Not just the titular poem, but also the first poem of his first book of poems. We shall try to answer this question as we proceed with the poem. But before that, I feel like relating a story. This story was narrated to me by Girish Karnad, who considered himself a disciple of A.K. Ramanujan, who was extremely close to A.K. Ramanujan throughout Ramanujan's life. Ramanujan was very ambitious as a young man and wanted his first collection of poems to be published by Oxford University Press, India. So, Ramanujan submitted the manuscript of The Striders to Oxford University Press, India, which promptly rejected it. The editor of OUP India passed the comment that what Ramanujan had written was not poetry, but prose chopped up rationally, rationally chopped up prose. Girish Karnad, who was then working with OUP Madras, then it was known as Madras, forwarded the manuscript forwarded the manuscript to OUP London and Oxford University Press UK published The Striders. It was a moment of triumph for both A.K. Ramanujan and Girish Karnad. Throughout his life, Ramanujan regretted that he was not recognized sufficiently in India while he was lionized in the West. And there was a core of truth in this complaint. The strider in the poem is an insect, most certainly, but it is much more than a mere insect. It is a compatriot of the speaker. The speaker lives in North America. That is where the strider lives. The speaker and the strider live in the same land, the same area, and thus the strider is a compatriot of the speaker. The strider is a mirror image of the speaker. The speaker sees the strider and he sees himself in the strider. Above all, the strider is a symbol. The strider provides the poem with a multifaceted and profound symbolism.